I think the way to win is to simply out-care everyone else.
Hey there, Powder Keg fans. I'm your host, Matt Hunkler, and this is episode 89 of Powder Keg Igniting Startups, the show for entrepreneurs, leaders, and innovators building remarkable tech companies in areas outside of Silicon Valley. Today, we'll be talking about how to raise capital and how that experience can evolve company culture. I'm really interested in talking about this because there's a difference in raising early rounds, like seed rounds, and how venture capital can really kind of change the culture of a company as you go from that bootstrap to venture scale type of business. And to do that, we've brought in two experts, one on the fundraising side that has helped probably dozens, if not hundreds of companies raise capital, and a rising entrepreneur here in the Midwest. First up, we have someone who is part of the Indianapolis tech community and has been for more than a decade. She's worked with, as I mentioned, probably hundreds of entrepreneurs and leaders to help them get a clearer view of their financial and operational environments and make intelligent decisions. She leads a technology practice at mAccounting, which is a company that turns finance from a necessary burden into a strategic asset, specifically for startups and high-growth tech companies. Please help me welcome the principal and director of mAccounting, Nicole Wallace.
Hi, how are you? By the way, it's been 2 decades, but oddly, I'm only 25 years old. I don't know how I pulled that off.
But who's keeping count, right?
Who's keeping count?
And next up, we have a young entrepreneur who graduated with a bachelor's from Purdue University in 2018, and just a year later, co-founded Socio Labs, where he's the CEO. It's an event tech company that lets organizers build apps that optimize event experience. We'll hear a lot more about this app and the business and extremely impressive growth that they're seeing right now in this episode, as well as his experience raising capital. Yarkin, help me with your last name.
Yeah, Sakucoglu.
Sakucoglu.
Yeah, correct.
Please help me welcome to the show, Yarkin Sakucoglu.
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you.
Great to be here
Yarkin
too.
is from Turkey, and his company actually has operations in Turkey as well.
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to talk about that too then.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Well, let's kick this thing off. Yarkin, tell us a little bit about your business. Can you give me kind of the elevator pitch for Socio?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we are a business-to-business software as a service company, and we help organizations ranging from small businesses up to large multinational enterprises optimize their events. This could be conferences, trade shows, internal, external meetings, expos. Basically, whenever more than, I would say, 50 to 100 people get together for longer than a day, our software becomes very useful.
Awesome. Can you tell me like maybe some of the events that we may have heard of or brands who have used your software?
Oh, yeah. We have over, I would say, around 400 customers in 37 different countries right now. Some of the names that you might know is Google is a customer.
I've heard of them, yeah.
Yeah, very decent company.
Yeah.
Microsoft is a customer. PepsiCo, Electronic Arts, Purdue University, Harvard University, Stanford University, some very innovative companies.
Well, I'm eager to hear how this kind of all came to be and all came together. Do you mind maybe sharing some of your background and how you ended up starting this company? Were you always entrepreneurial as a kid?
Yeah. I mean, I would say I have an interesting story. Like Nicole said, I am originally from Turkey. I was born and raised in a small Mediterranean town in Turkey. I do come from a family of entrepreneurs, so honestly, through my life, this has always been the natural next step for me. With that, very early on, I knew that I wanted to be in tech, and I knew that US was the place to be if you wanted to be in tech entrepreneurship. So very early on, I wanted to come here. I got a scholarship when I was in high school, and I basically left home when I was 15 and flew to Arizona. And
what was it about tech that got you so excited to fly from your country at age 15?
Yeah, I think it's the change that you can make, right? The scale that you can make it at, right? I think those are what attracts me to tech greatly. Like today, the fact that I could sit down in Purdue University with a few of my friends and write some code, design something, and deploy that globally, and have companies using us and paying us to use this service and this product in 37 different countries. That's not possible in a lot of areas, right? Tech is one of those areas where the distribution channels are super It's very quick, very real time. So yeah, I would say that is what really attracted me to tech.
Do you remember if there was like one company or one entrepreneur or one piece of technology that you were like, wow, like this gets me excited and gets me thinking about starting my own thing?
Yeah. I would say, like a lot of entrepreneurs, I believe, I was very attracted to business to consumer when I was getting started, as that is what I was exposed to as a consumer myself, right? So, I mean, like legendary companies like Google's, Microsoft products, Facebook's, Twitter's of the world clearly attracted me. To me, the really turning point was when I realized that in order for these companies to run, they needed software as well. And that's where I was exposed to the world of business to business. And I would say it really changed my mind and my life, I would say, from that point on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So talk to me about the idea for Socio. How'd that come about?
Yeah, well, after I went to Arizona, I studied for a few years for high school there. Then I got into Purdue University to study computer science, once again with the goal of becoming a tech entrepreneur.
Awesome program there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And at that point, I'll be honest, I thought and assumed that the only way to be a tech entrepreneur is to know how to code, know how to program. That it wasn't really exposed to the side of business that isn't necessarily about building, but selling, marketing, supporting, right? But yeah, at my years at Purdue, which I actually never graduated from Purdue. I actually dropped out with my co-founders to start this company. But yeah, I was exposed to events, right? I have first started attending events, and one thing that I realized was they are very inefficient when they are not planned right, right? I mean, as an attendee, you go there to network with people, right? Or to consume the content. As a sponsor, you might be there to get ROI. But in reality, a lot of things are so ancient in the world of event planning that you don't get what you're there for. It's inefficient. One thing that I was very lucky, because after attending a lot of events, I had the chance to actually get involved with planning an event. And that's when I realized, whatever I thought was inefficient from the perspective of the attendee was 100 times more inefficient from the perspective of the event organizer.
I can relate
Matt
to that.
knows nothing then.
And as you know, you guys put on a lot of events. It's very difficult, right? It's a hard job, and I do not believe that. I would say it's a very underserved market in terms of how difficult it is, and how looking at the lack of automation and lack of great products in the market, right? There are a lot of products. It's all about, for us, it's all about building that great product that solves that entire issue for the event organizers.
Well, and I want to dive into how you got the early traction, decided to raise a round of capital.
Yeah.
But first, would love to hear kind of how you got to meet Nicole, and that power combo came to be.
Absolutely. I actually met Nicole and got exposed to mAccounting at one of Powder Kegs events. I would go ahead and say this here. Socio works with, I would say, over 1,000 events a year. So we are very exposed to how events are planned and built. When events are done right, they are very powerful. And I think we have a very good example today, right? The only reason I met mAccounting, I got a chance to work with Nicole, was because I happened to attend one of Powder Kegs events. Went there, watched a few entrepreneurs pitch, and then you came up there and mentioned how you guys were using mAccounting. And I took a screenshot of that logo and sent it to my chief of staff so that we can schedule a demo. I believe in a few weeks we were customers. We started working together.
That's awesome. Well, Nicole, that sparks the question for you. How did you get plugged into this whole tech world? You mentioned 2 decades in the indie tech scene. You've helped so many companies raise rounds of capital, go through your acquisition process, probably even acquire companies as well.
Yeah.
What was your first exposure into the tech world?
It was absolutely serendipitous. I was at IU getting my degree, and I was at an honors banquet, and I met a local an MBA who was coming here to a local tech startup, Software Artistry, and he recruited me.
That's like the original. For those that
It's
don't know
kind
the history of
genesis,
Indianapolis,
no pun intended. Yes,
Yeah.
it is. And there were a few others at the time that were getting traction. I believe like Powerway. There were a few others. Made to Manage came along.
But for those that don't know, could you maybe give some context to what some of the Software Artistry founders and leadership
that's
went
the
off
big
to start afterwards?
thing. I mean, at the time, we were getting ready to IPO. We had very lean accounting staff, and they were starting the roadshow, and we were doing a more traditional for 1995. Don't laugh, Yarkin. More traditional IPO, and as that progressed, I'm obviously learning and understanding, but our founder, Don Brown, was very specific about wanting to seed capital, even at that stage of the company, in young potential entrepreneurs. And I think he's continued to leave that legacy throughout his additional endeavors.
Like Interactive Intelligence.
Like a little company called Interactive Intelligence. And and he's, of course, moved on again and is still doing exciting things and is still very much someone I bump into at my tech companies, my tech startups. Yeah. So he's still very active in the community, and there were many others. Bill Godfrey is, of course, very active, and I'm
one of the founders at Aprimo.
Exactly. I mean, we're really seeing a lot of those the people that came out of those initial companies come out and start their own companies. But beyond that, there's just such a momentum in the 2 decades I've been a part of it in terms of Purdue and local legislators and others really putting a lot of and Powder Keg putting a lot of energy behind giving a space for these young guys that may not have had a Don Brown but have these great ideas like a Yarkin. That's my space right now. I have certainly a lot of those legacy entrepreneurs, and they're either angel investors or they're still killing it in their respective businesses. And then I have a lot of 20-somethings coming out with these fantastic ideas that are really drawing on the momentum of those more established entrepreneurs, and certainly the Powder Kegs and other ventures that are giving them the boost that they need to make connections and grow.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yarkin, as a 20-something, are you in your 20s yet?
He's not even, don't ask,
Yeah,
he's 23.
I am 23.
Okay, there you go. So, as a young 20-something who hadn't raised a round of capital yet, is that when you decided to kind of connect with mAccounting, or was it you had already raised kind of your initial round and you were looking to scale?
No, he was looking to, put a lot of emphasis on coming to us in that stage of his business with a proven concept, the right players in the right places at the time, which is still expanding, and the traction he needed to come to me with, okay, I've got all these ideas. I know where I'm at right now. I know where I want to be. I know what I need in terms of capital. And there are, he's remarkably savvy for his age. Frankly, I learn as much or more from him than he does from me. He's very focused on the different, you call it the venture treadmill, but the different approaches he could take to fundraising in terms of going big and all the ramifications that come with that versus maybe staying local or maybe going East or West Coast but on a smaller scale.
Do you mind maybe sharing some of the thought process behind some of those options and why you decided?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, first of all, I think focus is the most important thing you can have as an entrepreneur because, at the end of the day, a lot of things are very uncertain at the early stages and you have limited resources. And by resources, it's not only money, it's mostly time, right? You have limited time and limited focus. So you got to figure out where to focus very well. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, and this is definitely my 2 cents, right? A lot of entrepreneurs try to focus too much on raising capital and make that a KPI for themselves, right? They lose sight on what really matters at the end of the day. Yes, it's absolutely it's extremely important to find right capital, right amount of capital at the right terms and most importantly from the right folks, right? But at the end of the day, you're there to build a business, and the only reason you raise capital should be to serve that purpose. So for that reason, I would say we have a different mindset in raising capital, right? I think if you're going to go ahead and raise capital, you should know the algebra of your business very, very well.
So what was it that you were focused on in those early days, like pre-considering raising capital?
Yeah.
Talk to me about if the KPI wasn't fundraising, which I 100% agree, is not the right KPI as an early stage company. What were those key KPIs, or was there one that you were focusing everything towards?
I think when you're first starting, your only KPI, and some people call these OKRs or like a gazillion names.
All the acronyms.
Your main focus should be your product market fit, in my opinion.
And
right?
for you, how are you measuring that?
First of all, a lot of things that you need to look at to measure it. To give you an idea of it, are you capable of selling this product? Are people actually wanting to buy your product? Once they buy your product, are they adopting your product? Once they adopt your product, are they at a stage where, it's a nice to have, or would they not be able to do their jobs if they lose that product today, right? If you take it away from them, would they be able to survive without it, or did it become so crucial and so critical to them that they can't live without it?
What were some of those early insights that you got that were key breakthrough moments in the evolution of Socio's product?
Yeah, well, very, very good question. Big moments for us were when people came to us, with problems, right? Because sometimes, let's be honest, right? Sometimes the buyer is not necessarily sure what they are looking to buy. They just know that they have a problem, right? And they know that they need to solve it to be successful. I think the checks on the check boxes were when I knew that we had the product market fit, is when people started coming to us and saying, I have this, and this problem. Well, guess what? We have built this product to solve that, and that problem. And maybe we might not be able to solve the fourth one yet, but guess what? That is on our roadmap, right? Yeah. When that alignment is there, that's very good. I think the second part is once they started using your product, and without even the renewal time coming, they start talking about renewing. They start talking about how they want to expand this contract to, I'll just give you an example, right? You might get started working with a company like Pinterest is one of our clients on a few events that they put on, right? Per year, and then you end up getting them to work with you on 100 events that they put on, then 200 events that they put on. That's basically a sign that you have something going there. And in my opinion, and clearly I'm talking about B2B SaaS here. If you're a hardware business and or if you're a life sciences businesses, or businesses that I don't know much about, to be very honest with you, you might need a lot of capital to get there. Right. In my opinion, if you're going to be running a business-to-business software as a service company, funds and capital could help you get there faster, but I do believe that there is very high value in not doing that, finding the product market fit, and even figuring out some of your go-to-market on your own without a lot of outside capital, and then raising capital once you figure those things out, because I promise you that you will know exactly what to do with that money instead of spending that money to figure out what you should be doing.
And Nicole, I know you talk to a lot of companies that consider raising funding. What percentage of those companies usually have that algebra figured out when they start talking to you about funding?
Very few. Most of them are looking to me to help them figure out that algebra. Okay. They have different elements of their business that they fully understand, and then there's always those gaps we need to fill in.
What's the most basic formula that you're usually looking for when figuring out the algebra? And let's use B2B SaaS just to keep it as an example.
Well, something, I'll kind of veer off your question for 1 second and sort of answer it, but Yarkin has a really balanced approach. So even in this pre-raise time period, he may be driven by finding that product market fit, but he did it with a more holistic view, which fills in a lot of those gaps. Because if he's constantly focused on customer success and product market fit, then the retention and expansion and the contraction metrics that we can quantify on a spreadsheet become very operational. Is my customer success team doing the right things, managing things the right way, communicating the right way? Did my product get developed, or is it being maintained in a way that meets those needs or solve those problems? And is sales communicating that the same way? Is marketing branding me the same way? That holistic approach makes it really easy for investors to see his passion, his message, the problem he's trying to solve. And it makes it a lot easier for me to quantify it from that point. So I guess in a long-winded way to answer that, because coming back, that's the gap, is I can make the numbers say whatever you want to say, but if operationally or if behaviorally or culturally you're not running your business that way, then it's not going to be conveyed to investors in a way that's compelling.
Yeah. Some of those metrics that, came to mind when you're talking about customer retention, churn being one of those metrics that's being on the output side of that algebra equation, customer acquisition costs.
All those. ARR, churn, CAC, you mentioned customer acquisition cost, lifetime value. These things are all, they shouldn't drive the business, but they should be good leading indicators of what we need to do to, we had a big discussion, Yarkin and I had a meeting this morning, and we had a big discussion around, the size of business and, specific markets we might target and those kinds of things. The out of that should come some of those KPIs that we need to measure. We shouldn't be using the KPIs to say, okay, let's sell more of this. Here's a perfect example. Should we sell a big enterprise deal? Are we worried about customer concentration if we sell a big enterprise deal and they churn off? Well, I'm not going to turn to a sales guy in the room and say, don't sell $1 million deal. You know what I mean? So it's we will react to that accordingly, but it's a factor to consider.
Sure.
So all the metrics are really all the same. Again, it comes back to going that layer deeper, which again, with that holistic approach, we're able to go now a layer deeper and say, what are my sales team's KPIs that give me this booking result that I want? And then what is my marketing team's inbound goal that gets me to this, the number of meetings and the number of closings that I want? So I guess there's a lot of different pieces to the puzzle, but ultimately, I can pull all of those together if the idea is that we're going to turn around and execute like that, not in a way that is, well, I've got to hit that bookings number, so let's do whatever we have to do to hit it.
Right. And Yarkin and Nicole mentioned that you kind of knew more of this algebra coming into it than most. Were there certain blogs that you were reading or podcasts or books in particular that you were kind of using as a playbook?
Yeah, I would say, one that I could recommend is SaaSter. Overall, that I believe gives has a very holistic approach to SaaS businesses, and without necessarily focusing on like sales over customer or customer over marketing, it gives this very holistic view that helps a lot. But clearly, there are a lot of books and resources that you have to find that are specifically targeted towards the departments or the functions of your business. Yeah.
So in your entrepreneurial journey, is that how you've kind of given yourself primers in each section? Because I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there who are just like, I just go by instinct, like Gary Vaynerchuk being one of those people who's like, I've never read a business book in my life. I've written, X number of New York Times bestsellers, but I've never read a book,
Right.
Yeah. Sounds like that hasn't been your approach.
I would say there's not one perfect way to do things, so I totally respect it if different people have different views. To me, it's all about surrounding myself with people that are smarter than me at their respective fields, right? Because at the end of the day, like no matter who you are, if someone that has done this, a year ago tells you exactly what they have been through, that will help you, right? At the end of the day, I think as an entrepreneur, you have to have the right mentors. And once again, going back to fundraising, you got to keep in mind that it's not only about how much money you raise, what's your pre-money valuation, post-money valuation. Clearly those are very important things. Don't forget about those things. But at the end of the day, who are you surrounding yourself with, right? Who are your partners? The analogy that we have in our company here in Socio is we are building a rocket ship. right? And we as the team of Socio are the pilots and the crew of this rocket ship, right? And fundraising is basically the fuel, the rocket fuel. You need to have good ground control. You need to have good co-pilots that are leading you and that are helping you lead your spaceship. That's how I look at it, right? So surround yourself with good people, in my opinion, and reading is pretty much the same thing there, right? It's just a more scalable way to get knowledge from someone who is not necessarily coming next to you to tell you the story. Instead, they ended up writing it somewhere so that they can distribute it a lot better. So to me, it's all the same. If the writer has experienced what I'm experiencing or what I am going to be experiencing in the next few years, by reading that, I could navigate situations a lot better.
And in terms of that ground control that you were building and that crew, I know Nicole was one of those people. Was there another mentor even earlier on when considering like even to raise capital, or how to raise capital, or who to raise it from?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give one example. I've been working with Ade.
Yeah,
Ade Olano of FormStack. He's
been on the podcast before.
Yeah, he's one of our angel investors as well. I mean, I don't know how to even like describe this experience. You know, Ade has been through a few different roads of entrepreneurship before with his previous ventures. One where he pretty much bootstrapped to a very big success. The other one, he ended up raising a lot of money. So as a mentor, Ade could bring in tremendous value because he knows both sides of the game, right? And I would say he's one of those folks that I am talking to, I would say, a few times a week.
What are some of the early lessons that you learned from Ade, or what's one of your favorite lessons that you learned?
Yeah, this is one that he told me. Like I said, he pretty much, almost bootstrapped one business to be very successful FormStack, and he also had other Thrive with FormSpring, I believe, where he raised a lot of money. As an operator, clearly, before you raise money, you ask yourself the question of how am I going to deploy this? What is the best strategy to deploy this? Because as you move from an execution mode to the management mode and the deployment mode, it's no longer about you working 100 hours a week. You certainly should try doing that. It definitely helps, but you got to make the resources work, right? You got to make the money work. You got to deploy in the correct way to get the ROI that you want. And once again, going back to the first point I made, that should be the only reason why you're raising money, is because you know how it's going to turn out, in my opinion, once again. One thing that Ade told me was, he said, if you had $100, or let's say $100,000 or $1 million, if you're trying to solve the same problem, he said that in his experience, he realized that you end up spending the same multiples of the money. So you just spend $100,000 and $1 million at the same time on the same problem. Yes, it might help you resolve it a little bit faster otherwise. So when he told this story to me, I really dive a lot deeper into my financial model to see, because it makes a lot of sense, right? Just because you have a lot more capital to deploy doesn't mean that you can't do it in an inefficient way. So you have to be a lot more careful, because guess what? $10 million could be a lot of money when you have 20 employees in your company, but once you have 200 employees in your company, that money burns very, very, very fast.
Yeah.
And
this is music to my ears, by the way. Keep talking. I like this.
Yeah. So you got to be very smart about it, right? And he told me a lot of stories about how he navigated through situations, how he led his team. It's so valuable. It's unbelievable.
And as you're going through your fundraising, from my standpoint, our conversations, our financial conversations, vacillate between again, some of this more holistic, setting KPIs or OKRs for each of our teams and making sure they're all driving toward a common goal. But that common goal always comes back to commitments I want to make to my investors, and that fiduciary responsibility that Yarkin feels at the top. So, and that helps me. That helps me. And as far as I think you asked earlier, what things do you see that people don't know when they come to the table, and to have that 2-year goal, even if it's a big audacious goal, having that 2-year goal that's quantifiable, that I can say, okay, there, I'm going to lock that in, and we're going to go for that, and measure our success against it, and adapt as quickly as possible. I think you'd like to adapt daily, and I think today you alluded to, we'll meet with accounting every 2 days. Sometimes it can go too far. I think he was joking, but I
think he just likes spending time with you.
Could be. I like spending time with him, but 2 days is a lot. But we'll be managing those, at minimum weekly, and again, getting as far ahead of where we're off those goals and what we can do to correct the ship.
Yeah.
The rocket ship. Keep your analogy going.
Exactly.
Well, and they keep that analogy going when you're talking about putting rocket fuel in. It's a different stage of the company. Your crew is probably doing different things. Like your flight crew, your people in the actual, I don't know if you call it cockpit, but like in the actual shuttle, are doing different things once that rocket fuel is ignited and you're taking off.
Yeah.
How did things shift once you brought on angel investment?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I would say this is one of the things that I thought about a lot before accepting any money into the company as well, because at the end of the day, your culture is very important when you're first getting started, right? Every single person that you hire actually contributes to that culture a lot, and helps you build that culture as well. And just
or can hurt that culture.
Yeah, or can hurt that culture as well. You have to be very careful, right? Just like we should, as entrepreneurs, as founders, as executives, worry about and ask questions about how are we going to scale our operations? How are we going to scale our people, right? How are we going to scale marketing? How are we going to scale sales? We should also be asking ourselves, how are we going to scale our culture, right? Because I feel like it's one of those things that we entrepreneurs don't think a lot about, and I could totally see it, kind of being one of the million problems that you're trying to solve, one of the million things that you're trying to accomplish. But I think it's one of the biggest elements in there as well. So you're absolutely right, though. Things are going to change, and the mindset shift that I mentioned earlier about execution mindset to deployment and management mindset, that also applies to all of your employees as well. I mean, that mindset shift has to happen, and I think the companies have to communicate that very clearly with their employees, with their teammates, and set those expectations very well.
Tactically, how did you do that at Socio?
Yeah, so there's something still that we are trying to do. I don't think it's one of those things that is on your to-do list and you check it when it's done. I think it's a continuous thing that you have to do.
Sure.
One of the first things that we did was to hire actually a chief of staff, right? That actually helps me and helps kind of scale me, right? Scale the CEO to make sure that we can still pay attention to everything, including our people. We can still listen to our people. One of the things that we are currently doing, and this is one of our open job positions, so I'll go ahead and plug. Yep, I'll go ahead and plug here.
All right, listen up, listeners.
We are hiring a head of people / head of talent to actually help us scale that culture even better and even more, I would say, intentionally, right? Because the culture does scale, but if you don't control how it scales, then you don't know where it's gonna go. So you need folks that are very focused on this, in my opinion, and that's why we are hiring this position right now.
Nicole, can you talk to me a little bit about how you've seen this play out at other companies and where some of those pitfalls might be as a company is shifting into the funded part of their journey?
Yeah, I mean, it can be, I think it all goes together, what he said. You get this influx of cash, and then you decide you're going to hire, 20 salespeople, and you put 5, and again, these are generalities, but you put 5 values on the wall and think, we're going to be great, and that's really common because the CEOs that I work with at these scale-up startup tech companies are just incredibly busy. I mean, just wearing every possible hat. And they aren't necessarily, it is an art. There is no science to it. So being purposeful about having multiple voices in the room, like his chief of staff, that can say that person's not a fit, and making sure that as you're deploying, and most of the resources in the world that we live in are people that we're deploying in terms of dollars, that those people are a good fit and we're hiring at the right pace. Today, we had a conversation about incentive plans, and the word culture was used. We don't want something that's not going to incentivize people, but we also want to create a collaborative culture between, sales and customer support, as an example. So keeping that always front of mind and recognizing it as an art, and not getting out over your skis in terms of thinking you can truly put 20 bodies in 20 chairs and not have it impact your culture.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Right, and when you think about deploying that rocket fuel, how much of that rocket fuel, in general, are you seeing companies, especially in the early stages, put into talent?
Oh, I mean, the vast majority. Yeah, the vast majority. I see some outsourced development, but in the B2B SaaS space, it's all about the getting those meetings and getting that closes, or getting traffic to your site. And in those cases, you're seeing a lot of support. You're seeing lead gen, or you're seeing AEs or SDRs, BDRs coming in, and there's a lot of turnover in that position, because we do see a lot of that approach of, put 20 bodies in chairs the minute we get the cash and let's see what they can do. And then you have some turnover, or you have some people that are kind of pulling in different directions, or it negatively impacts your culture or collaboration or collaborative environment. And that causes a lot of issues within your company, and creates, frankly, more work for the CEO. Right. Something that I think is pretty exciting, that is a direction I think Powder Keg's taking, is to really not only put the responsibility on the businesses to understand and communicate their culture, but put a responsibility on the talent to say, I want to evaluate a place I want to be. I want to understand that this is a fit for me. This is a fast pace. This is a slower paced. This is a work from home, work at the office. Evaluate really what those things are that you need. Make sure that you're marrying your talent and your needs with the culture of the company you're going to.
Yeah, because neither the company or the talent wants it to not work out.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
No, I've never heard someone say, I hope to leave in 2 years.
Right.
That's not, that's just not the case, but it
Yeah.
does happen. And it's, for me, it's, I joke sometimes that I think you have even better numbers than I do on this, but it's extremely expensive. I mean, it really is. And it's very distracting for the CEO, and it's hard on the staff.
Yeah.
So
the numbers that we saw was 50 to 250% of annual salary to replace someone who churns in an early stage company.
I'd buy that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And it's interesting too when you think about that like losing someone from your team that you're not prepared to lose. Especially when you're a team of 10 or less, you're losing
so disruptive.
10% or more of your staff.
Mm-hmm. And their training and their institutional knowledge, and all of those
the
things.
effects on culture as well.
Absolutely.
So Yarkin, can you tell me a little bit about your recruitment process? How do you currently vet culture fit at Socio?
Yeah, absolutely. First, let me tell you a little bit about our culture.
Sure.
And
would love to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one phrase to really summarize our culture is the fact that we care. Right. That's why you asked me this question a few days ago as well.
I did.
Yeah. It's simply we care. We care about our customers. We care about our product, our market. We care about our community. But most importantly, we care about our people. At the end of the day, we are not a manufacturing company. We don't own machines. We don't have big facilities. All we have is bright people, right? And bright people build bright, amazing products. They build amazing companies. So at the end of the day, we care about our people, and we believe that the way to win in today's market, and it's very competitive, no matter which customer you're running after, which budget you're running after, it is very competitive. I think the way to win is to simply out-care everyone else.
I like that.
Isn't that the coolest?
Yeah, I like that a lot.
I asked him this a few days ago, and I had to take a moment. That's great. I love it.
We simply have to care more than anyone else have. Right.
Care about your team more than any other company out there.
Care about your team. Care about your team. Care about your customers. Care about why you exist, why your product exists, the problem that you're trying to solve. But it all goes down to caring about your people, because if you don't care about your people, they're not going to care about your business. They're not going to care about your customers. So you have to care about them first. So when we are hiring people, we try to hire people that are willing to care.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. Well, and if you want to get connected to more talent, definitely check out powderkeg.com. It's a great place, whether you're an employer or a professional who just wants to see what else is out there in your market, whether it's in Indy or elsewhere. Lots of great companies like Socio we're trying to connect talent with. And ultimately, I just want to say thanks for sharing your experiences. I hope we have you back on the show soon to share sort of more of an update of where that growth is.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. That's it for today's show. Thanks so much for listening. Also, huge thanks, of course, to Nicole Wallace and Yarkin. I'll just say Yarkin of Socio Labs. For links to their social profiles and the other people, companies, and resources mentioned in this episode, head on over to powderkeg.com and check out the show notes. Also, if you're looking for a tech job in tech, if you're looking for a job in tech to ignite your career, go to powderkeg.com to get started. Totally free. We're really just trying to create a better connected tech ecosystem here. And to be among the first to hear the stories about entrepreneurs, investors, and other tech leaders outside of Silicon Valley, subscribe to us on iTunes at powderkeg.com/iTunes. Catch you next time on Powderkeg Igniting Startups.